They had come. The mighty roar of the sacred jet bikes echoed over the din of battle as the ceramite-clad white scars plunged into the battle like a thunderbolt. For the Emperor! Death to the heretic! Jala and the other white scars came screaming down the sheer walls of the hab block, down into the thoroughfare below, their twin-linked bike-mounted heavy bolters chewing through the lines of heretics. Even heretics behind barricades and sandbags were not safe. The heavy-caliber bolter shells shredded through piles of scrap, and the explosive rounds sent superheated clouds of sand shooting directly into the faces of the enemy. The appearance of the white scars and the sudden hail of bolter fire caused the first line of the heretic defenses to flee in panic. Jala and his men were quick to gun them down. To the credit of the heretics, the second line reacted quickly and began laying down cover fire. The white scars began to serpentine back and forth to avoid enemy retaliation. Commander Carter ordered his units to advance. "Forward, men! Double time! Give the Marines some cover fire!"
"But sir, it's really hard to shoot when you're wiggling back and forth like that. I don't want to hit the Marines."
"Oh, we have to support them somehow. Wait a minute. Grenades! Ogg, you're strong enough to get a grenade over those barricades, right?"
I think so, yeah."
"Make it happen. Men, give your frag grenades to the Ogryns as we advance. We need to keep those heretic heads down." Ogg found that his augmetic arm could throw a bit farther than his flesh and blood arm. His normal arm was also a little better at removing the cap and pulling the pin. So he and his Ogryns began hurling grenades as fast as they could. Explosions and shrapnel began to fly behind enemy lines as the heretics were forced to dive for cover in their foxholes and trenches. Some heretics were able to get off a few shots before the grenades started to rain down on them. The white scars were peppered with las and stubber fire, but their armor was able to withstand them. As the white scars pressed in on the enemy, more and more of the enemy soldiers began to panic and flee, and in much larger numbers. The fleeing soldiers blocked enemy lines of fire and sowed even greater panic in their ranks. The white scars had begun a little avalanche by their daring thrust. They didn't gun down the heretics, not just yet. They waited until the fleeing soldiers slammed into the next line of defense. Some were even gunned down by their own men for cowardice. Others began to follow their example, abandoning their positions and fleeing. This created a full-on rout as the irregulars advanced and began pouring fire downrange, eliminating any stragglers that were left behind. As the white scars spearheaded the advance, the sounds of battle could be heard in the distance. Fighting lines were forming at the landing ramp, with heretics gathered at the bottom, trying to drive back the Imperial defenders from the entrance to the ship. Carter knew that they still needed to fight their way through the heavily defended central square, though many of the defenses were admittedly facing inwards towards the large Imperial vessel. Ogg was simply enduring the chaos of battle by maintaining a steady barrage of grenades, making sure to hurl them past where the Space Marines were fighting. Just then, heavily armored walkers emerged. They looked to be converted mining drones that were modified to carry heavy weapons. Las blasts could do little more than scorch their outer armor, and even the bolters couldn't easily penetrate their hulls. With a sharp hiss, rockets came streaking from these monstrosities and spiraled towards the Space Marines. Their speed made it difficult for the walkers to find their mark, but as the irregulars advanced, the room the Marines had to maneuver was getting smaller and smaller. The shockwave from one explosion caused Batar, one of the Emperor's angels, to wobble as he struggled to maintain control of his bike. In that split second, another rocket came screaming towards him and struck the bike in the side, blasting Batar clean off the vehicle, causing his body to tumble into a nearby foxhole. His bike careened into an enemy barricade and exploded. The Marine did not move. "Take down those walkers! Crack grenades now!" Ogg had once heard the explanation for the difference between crack and frag grenades. Most of the more sophisticated parts he forgot, But he remembered that frags were for fragging enemies, and cracks were for cracking vehicles and tanks. Ogg began hurling the new grenades. They were much harder to aim. The frag grenades you could just throw at the enemy and they'd probably hit something. But for crack grenades, you had to get them to attach to the vehicles. You had to hit them dead on or else they wouldn't stick. Heavy weapons! Where are my heavy weapons teams? Commander Carter shouted as a missile launcher team stepped forward and loaded their payload. They took careful aim from behind a piece of debris and fired. A hit! A glancing hit, but a hit! The walker lurched forward from the impact. Beneath the cloud of smoke, Ogg could still see the machine's thundering footfalls. So the Ogryn drew forth a crack grenade, pulled the pin, and hurled it at his intended target. The grenade arced through the air, tumbling end over end. Ogg nearly cursed when he saw it hit the ground just in front of the enemy vehicle. But by the luck of the Emperor, it bounced forward and managed to attach to the machine's undercarriage. The crack grenade exploded, penetrating the hull and setting off secondary ammo explosions. The irregulars were advancing now, but the rebels were returning fire. Men loyal to the Emperor fell in his name in the hail of fire that followed. The other walker was becoming a rallying point for the heretics. Jala put pedal to metal as he urged his war machine forward, using the smoke from the exploded walker as cover. A missile from the other enemy whistled overhead as he remained hidden in the smoke cloud. He erupted forth, power sword held aloft above his head as he sliced clean through the heretic machine, as well as its unfortunate pilot. Jala wheeled his bike around as the enemy broke and fled before him. To the Emperor's voidcraft! Let not the heretic defile her! For the Emperor!
For the Emperor!
The irregulars drove the enemy out from their positions on the edge of the courtyard. But the Arbites were not yet caught up to the main force, and rebel pot shots were beginning to rain down from the many viewports of the Hab complexes towering over the street. And there was still the matter of the army still standing between them and the isolated cruiser. The irregulars consolidated their positions and secured the outer barricades. Jala climbed down into the foxhole where Batar's body lay. Ogg could see him saying something, but the other space marine did not move or reply. The Ogryn could see blood seeping from the gaps in the ceramite, a great deal of blood. He left Jala to his moment of grief as he looked out over what looked like a sea of trenches and heretics. The Emperor only knew how they would reach the vessel. No man do they call me, my mother and my father, and all my comrades as well. Thank you all for listening to the latest episode of Ogg the Ogryn Returns. If you enjoyed what you heard, please leave a like and a comment. And if you would like to hear more stories about Ogg and Space Marines, please subscribe to this channel. If you would like to support me, links to my PayPal and my Patreon are down below in the description. And if you have absolutely no idea what's going on, there is a link to the Ogg the Ogryn Returns playlist, which should be appearing on screen right now. And if you really have no idea what's going on, then you can start at the very beginning and watch the first Ogg the Ogryn series, which will be linked down in the description. Thank you all very much. No Man out.